A Celtic State of Mind has been named as one of 7 finalists in the Best International Podcast category at this year's Football Content Awards. We won the Best Football Podcast Award in 2018, and it is a real achievement to be finalists once again. Thank you all for your ongoing support over the last 3 years. If you have been enjoying our daily content, then feel free to vote for A Celtic State of Mind at footballcontentawards.com. I have added the link to the bio of this episode, and the instructions and further links are also on axom.net. You can also vote on Twitter by simply tweeting, I am voting for @AxomPod in @the_FCAs for #BestPodcast. Thank you again for all your support. Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and tonight I caught up with Glasnevin's Connor and Kieran for a chat about Celtic music, St Pauli and Glasnevin's latest album. I hope you enjoy Glasnevin with A Celtic State of Mind.
We had high expectations because the first album, the two we were delighted with it. It kind of set the theme, it set this kind of a path for the band. That first album we done was quite against the grain. Any other rebel band had done at the time. There was a lot of songs on it that they had done before. So we kind of said, right, well, we're going to have to continue with that because this is kind of the expectations we've set ourselves now. We don't want to just do this. People maybe want to listen to the album and discover new songs that maybe not heard before. So we were coming up with all these ideas for about 10 years and just we'll put this song on it and we'll put this song on it and then we'll dump that one, and before you know it, 10 years go past and you've not got an album.
It's incredible, Connor. I mean, it's completely different, of course, from writing a book, but I think there's some similarities in that I think the longer it goes, the harder it becomes because you start questioning everything. You start doubting your instincts and things get thrown away that maybe before you would have used and they probably would have been okay. Obviously, yous have got over that bit and the album's out, so let's talk about the history of the band, your new album, have a wee chat about lockdown and how that's affecting musicians like yourselves. I mean, it's been absolutely hellish for, live performers not being able to get out there. How you've adapted and managed to get stuff out there when you're obviously behind closed doors, if you like. And talk about Celtic, because obviously we've celebrated, if you could call it that, 9 in a row. We've had the season ticket announcement which went down like a lead balloon the other day, and we don't really know how long it's going to be before we are able to go back to games and gigs. So the whole thing's up in the air, but it certainly makes for an interesting discussion. Connor, so let's go back. Talk to me about getting the band together all that time ago, a decade ago. How did you and Kieran get together?
My recollection of it all is 2009, the tail end of 2009. I'd been speaking with Chris who plays with the band The Wakes. I'd been going to see The Wakes and all the other bands for years and years, and I'd played in bands but never sort of Irish bands, so it never came to much. And at that stage Connor just came on the scene, so I'd said to Chris about maybe joining a band or helping out with bands, and he'd put me in touch with Connor. So I remember we met in the toll booth just before the week before Christmas 2009. Connor was still only 17 at the time, and he was due to turn 18 a few weeks later. So it kind of went for there, and then things went quiet for a wee while till maybe about the February. I know Connor had a bereavement in his family, so that kind of put everything on the back burner for a while. We got together February, kind of solid. I was going over to Connor's 2 or 3 times a week practicing away, and I'd just got a mandolin for that Christmas previously, and I was showing up to some of Connor's gigs, and like Connor said the other night when we were chatting about it, he said like the Ron Burgundy Anchorman thing, I'm not prepared, and then I pull out the mandolin thing, but that was kind of along the lines of that. And then our first ever gig properly together was in the Brazen Head, and that was the start of the March 2010. Again, we were gigging fairly regularly every weekend. It would have been up until about the May, and we went to the Celtic St Pauli game over in Hamburg. And by that stage, I was at my wit's end with my job. Connor had already given up his job about 6 months previous to do it full time, and I thought, you know what, if I can get more than what I can get in the brew every week, I'll be happy. At that stage, I would just want out a job. So done that, and then it was a quite a world one. That was the May, and by the August, we were in Santa Ponsa gigging every night, and it's kind of, it just went for there. It's crazy how, we were talking about that the other night as well, just how quickly things happen and how there was never a plan of action, never a plan at all to be full time. It was just everything fell into place at the right time then. And we just went at it, taking gigs everywhere we could, despite none of us driving. Thankfully, Connor's dad and my brother drove us the length and breadth of Scotland and England.
God love them.
We were taking gigs on the Thursday night and turning around saying, my brother would say, where he's gigging tomorrow? Like, Dundee. How's getting to Dundee? Oh, I meant to ask you doing it? And stuff like that. But, well, it's all character building as well. So we learn from a few mistakes, but we don't have any regrets about how things started.
Very, very humble beginnings.
See the thing, Kieran, you're talking there about, giving up your job. It's a massive decision, and I take my hat off to anybody who chases their musical dream or writing or anything, and they give up their job because of the responsibilities that people have and the pressures of modern day life to actually go and chase that dream. It's a massive thing. So fair play to you for doing that. And 10 years on, you're still here, you're still a band, and you've released your second album. In the 10 years, other than this crazy lockdown period, how has the Glasgow Irish music scene changed in that decade?
There was a lot of pubs that have now closed down in the Gallagate, and there's some other pubs that maybe don't do the music the way they used to do it. But everything seems to have moved into the city centre. It's a lot more, from our point of view, it's a lot more mainstream. You've got bars like Gracie's, St Vincent's, Malone's, Conley's, and you've got people coming in there that would never really go up the Gallagate. No, for any reason really. It just wouldn't have been a place they would have drank. So you've got people coming in, families having meals and stuff, and you're gigging. So I mean, it's come on leaps and bounds in terms of our musical sort of repertoire and stuff. It forces you to learn new things, because beforehand you were only playing maybe Friday, Saturday nights in the Gallagate, whereas now you can be playing 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Gracie's, and the place is busy. It can be rammed sometimes, especially before games. And you have to sort of adapt to things like that. But from a personal point of view, for myself and Connor, things have never been better in terms of we can dip in and out of doing our solo gigs, and we can get the band together to do the bigger functions at night or whatever.
Aye, I'll just on that note, Kieran, about the kind of getting into the city centre and stuff like that. I will say that we kind of caught the tail end of this transition, and there was a lot of bands out there that kind of did put the blood, sweat and tears into a living for to make it so popular in this city. Because they were the ones that were standing in the bars when they were getting attacked and fucking blew up by the UVF. Do you know what I mean? And they were the ones that were kind of made it mainstream. And there's a lot of bands that are kind of benefiting from that now. And it's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing at all. The music should be played everywhere. Irish music in this country, it should be welcomed everywhere. But there was definitely a big sacrifice to part of a lot of bands before we came along to make that helped us kind of enjoy the fruits. Their sacrifice. We caught the kind of tail end of it. We played in a lot of the bars before the city centre became the place to go. But no, that's how it's changed. Maybe the last, and as you say, in the last 10 years, it's definitely moved out of the smaller bars and into the bigger arena in the city centre. But still maintaining that local support as well. So we're taking over. It's as simple as that.
I think what else benefited as well, Connor saying we caught the tail end of it. Social media obviously was about, it's only 10 years ago, but it wasn't the way it is now, where every single one of our bookings comes through social media as opposed to business cards even 5 years ago now. And like again, we were speaking about it the other night when we had a wee chat, and Connor brought up all the things about the character building, and like we used to get left in Ireland by bands. We would go jump in a van with other bands, you would get left, you'd be at a service station, you'd come out, the van would be away, and like you just leave people behind. And I think the fact that we were full-time, and if there was a gig going anywhere, sure as fate, we would have taken it and tried to get there. So you put yourself in a lot of these predicaments. And we left ourselves open to this sort of... It's when you hear about the old players talking about the way the pros used to treat them at the club, the washing the boots and all that, and it kind of was similar to that. You'd get to a venue, Shabine would all be standing at a bar with a drink, and you'd be humping the speakers in, and then you'd be lucky to get left home. But it was all good fun, and we've made a lot of good friends out of it, I think.
Definitely, that's the apprenticeship. I mean, you mentioned St Pauli there, and myself, I got into St Pauli through the listening and hearing these chants appearing around about Celtic Park and wondering exactly what it was, then seeing the skull and crossbones, and then eventually reading up on the history of the club, going over to Germany, spending some time in the Jolly Roger, doing that whole thing, just immersing myself in the culture of that club. I mean, see this friendship between St Pauli and Celtic, how important is that to you as a musician, and how welcoming are they when you go over to Germany?
It's the best we've ever played.
Like, I've never had a welcome like it. Like, it was we first done the Celtics and it was a Celtics and Pauli party that we sort of gate crashed to become a band in 2010, and then we get invited back. I think it was the following year to play, and they had it right. They picked us up at the airport, took us to the hotel, took us out for a meal and stuff. And me and Colin are quite left field as it is. So is Chris for the Wakes as well. They're sort of like into sort of alternative music and stuff. So there's that sort of punk lifestyle, these dirty bars, dark stickers everywhere, people smoking in bars despite none of us smoking. There was just this beauty. I don't know. It was like maybe Glasgow was 20, 30 years ago that we all missed out on. And we've made a lot of good friends in Hamburg, friends for life. And it's somewhere we've went back to even without gigging. We've continuously went back year on year. And it's just a place, it's close to our hearts. I mean, it's an hour and a half away on a flight, and you may as well be on the other side of the world. But the welcome we get, and Connor will tell you as well, that just... you're treated like kings, really. They can't do enough to help to make you feel at home, really. And it's a shame that we can't really do that for them when they come over here, because the bands don't really come over here much in that. Like, the fans obviously come over, but they all do their own thing. So it's hard to repay the bands that treat us. We land over there with a couple of pairs of boxer shorts and a spare T-shirt and that shoe. So it's a fantastic place. Like you said, you've been to Jolly Roger and stuff, and it's another world, but it's another world that we love.
You just feel part of it, you know. You actually feel comfortable in that environment. I went over and I took my brother and my brother-in-law, my father and everything, and it was just, there was certainly a welcoming feel. And what I've always wondered is, obviously we went over there to play the centenary game for St Pauli, and I was talking to Paul Sheridan from the Wakes about this a few weeks ago. Why on earth doesn't Celtic bring St Pauli over for a pre-season friendly? I mean, we end up playing dead rubber games against clubs that didn't have any kind of attraction whatsoever pre-season. Can you understand or explain that?
I really not. I think it's all to do with the money and sponsorships. You see some of these teams coming up for England and you wonder, why are we playing teams like Sunderland? And then you look who's all running the betting companies, and they're all under one parachute, and it could be something as simple as whereas St Pauli, they would bring, I reckon St Pauli would bring over 5,000-6,000 people easy for a pre-season friendly. The same way Celtic did for their party in 2010. And it would just be one big weekend party. And I think places like the Gallagate and that would really be buzzing for the first time in a good few years out with the bigger games. But it's a weird one that they've never got together. And especially Celtic, they were selling the half and half scarves and stuff in the shop. So it's not like they deny their friendship.
Celtic are always looking to probably tap into new markets as well. Do you know what I mean? But they already know that they've got that backing in St Pauli. They're probably looking to this bring on fucking, I don't know, Celtic Norwich family, Celtic Brentford family, and all this fucking, you know what I mean, all these kind of friendlies that have played, and we're all best of pals all of a sudden. I think it was actually Brentford that kicked off. I think Norwich was a big one. Adam Jury's fucking testimonial, but they're probably looking to, as you said, it's all who the old favours to, you know what I mean? It's all the sponsorship that kind of dictate the pre-season friendlies, you know what I mean? Because we played Rennes last 2 years, was it last year? We played them in a pre-season friendly, and then we got them in the group stages. Do you know what I mean? So you're like, but why not play something a bit you know you're not going to fucking have a chance of. Exactly. St Pauli, we're not going to get a chance to fucking play them in a competitive competition.
I'd love to see the day when they come over, because I can just imagine the weekend that would entail. There would be kind of a festival atmosphere. Sticking on to the subject of St Pauli, what I was intoxicated with was their whole culture and mentality, the fan base talking about anti-fascism, anti-homophobia, anti-racism, because that kind of mentality is what I would describe as a Celtic state of mind. That's what our fan base can tap into, and we've got that common ground with them. What's your thoughts on Donald Trump's stance against Antifa and try to term them a terrorist organisation over the last few weeks?
That's crazy. You think that anyone would be being against fascism. I mean, that is just mind-boggling to begin with. He just sees anybody that's against his form of capitalism as this lefty Antifa crackpots, and he thinks all these people are students or they all live in hippie huts and that, whereas you see, I mean, pretty much all of that area, Hamburg, is very much left-wing. There's slogans on every building, flags hanging from windows, and it's it's crazy how anyone would be against being against fascism, especially with America's history in the World War and against all these fascist regimes that have happened all over the world that they've went out their way to start wars with. It's just crazy. It's and the Americans that we're pally with that you would speak to day, they're taken back by it. But I think the problem is just you go against him and you go against every ethos that America stand for, which isn't the case. There's people, Connor will tell you, the ones that we've met over there, I mean, they're diehard American patriots, but they've also got feelings, obviously, towards what's happened in the past. And it's like Donald Trump's just trying to whitewash everything and rewrite history, and it's crazy.
It's quite concerning when somebody with that level of power is able to come away with these comments, because you know that there's plenty of people who will, be sheep and actually just follow his lead. That's what's the most frightening thing for me over the last few months, being stuck in the house here, is watching how the world leaders are watching their incompetence unravel in front of us and watching it on social media. It's scary on the one hand, but I think we're in the midst of a revolution when you look at the streets and how people are reacting to that. Do you think when you are faced with such adversity from authority that the people can really come together and actually be a much better force against, these kind of, because Trump is a fascist, simple as that.
The thing is on that subject is you've got to look at, you're saying about what you've seen the last few weeks during the lockdown about the world leaders and stuff like that. You've got to look at who's controlling the narrative, and you're gaining them the power by even tuning into their shite. Do you know what I mean? So see if you just fucking totally tune after it, and it's hard. I know it is hard in this modern day, but at the end of the day, the only person you're ultimately responsible for is yourself and your own actions. Do you know what I mean? We put too much pressure on ourselves to go out and try and change the fucking world, whereas we can't. We can only do it with what we do in ourselves and our own actions. And people are beating themselves up, and people are getting panicked, and people are getting these anxiety attacks because they're looking at what's happening in the world, they're looking on the news and seeing these fucking helicopter footage of these people just swarming everywhere. And it's overwhelming, especially in the middle of a lockdown. You just feel so helpless. But the thing is, people have got to remember, you can only do so much. The only thing you can do is make sure you're living your life and not being a prick. You know what I mean? Just be a good person. That's it. Don't burden yourself with too much. Just treat others the way you want to be treated, and that's it. When you look at Trump and all that kind of stuff, and you will overwhelm yourself. You'll start to feel dead down because you can't change it. So all you can do is kind of do your own actions. That's it. Don't worry about anything else. Everything else will kind of take care of itself. Just worry about you, because people are getting bad. People are really worrying about people's mental health is seriously deteriorating. Worrying about all this kind of stuff happening in the world. Don't fucking worry about it. Just worry about you. Just do you, don't know. I mean, just you focus on yourself.
I'll tell you, it's encouraging hearing that, because, as you say, Connor, there's a lot of people struggling with the anxiety and the fear. The fear is a big thing, the fear of the unknown. One of the strengths that people can get is through music, and you guys will understand that far more than me because you create it. I mean, you were very kind to come along and support me back in 2016, and it was just at the time of the release of your single at that point, Grace, and it was a song that, I'm probably like yourselves, you'll have been listening to this song throughout your lives, constantly hearing these beautiful singers singing Grace, and then all of a sudden it seemed to get a second wind and it became popular. How was your single received after that night? Because I think it was just being released on the night that you played it at Celtic Park that night.
It was, the idea came about is especially Connor was always sort of close with the Green Brigade. Even before he was playing, he was sort of in protection or whatever it was at their time, of travelling to away games as part of the group or with members of the group or whatnot. So it's always a group that we've been friendly with, different members here or there. And hearing, like, not just Facebook posts about the sort of injustices they were facing, but you were hearing in the pub and that, some of them saying what they were going through, losing their jobs, doors going in the morning, then will get proven not guilty just for completely made up allegations against them. And I remember one of them telling us about just a rough estimate of what their legal costs were for sort of the tail end of 2016. And myself, Connor and Chris had said that they sort of made a sit down and had a chat, and we said, I reckon we can get a song battered out. And there was nothing more popular at the time than Grace. The Green Brigade had been singing it quite a lot. It was catching on at Celtic Park. It was one of the most requested songs, if not the most requested song in the bars as well at that stage. And we thought, how can we utilise that to do some good? So for our point of view, we thought, get it recorded and try and integrate the Green Brigade in by using sort of, at the tail end of the song, we put in a clip of them all singing it and stuff, and it worked really well. Chris from the Wakes, he done all the editing stuff on it and recorded us. And the single went down very well from a selfish point of view and our point of view. We got it to number one in the iTunes charts for an hour or two during a day in December 2016. But we thought if we released it when we did the week before Christmas or 2 weeks before Christmas, then everything would have been getting saved for the big Christmas release, who's going to be number one. Not that we in a million years ever thought we would ever get into the charts, but for a small timescale, there was an opportunity, if it was pushed a bit further, that it could have maybe made it into whatever these charts were as well, but it just wouldn't have get the exposure. We were happy with the exposure it got because it raised about £4,500–5,000 in the space of 2 weeks to help these guys out with legal fees. And it's a shame that such a big amount raised was still only a fraction of what the guys needed to cover legal fees. But the single went down well. It's one of these songs that I think people are always going to go back and listen to as well. And it's, in terms of you going to Spotify or iTunes, it's probably one of the most listened to Irish songs, whether it's Wolf Tone's version or Jim McCann or anybody's version. And I'm just glad that we were able to give something back as well, because there is times you feel like you're just taking, not in a point of view or anything like that, but sometimes you're just gigging, and there's not much happening, especially over winter. So it was good to utilise that time and help the guys out and hopefully put a small dent into the legal fee.
When we talk about the Green Brigade and the importance of that group of people to Celtic, to the atmosphere, and also I think to our worldwide appeal. We were talking about St Pauli before. There became this appeal where you actually wanted to go and investigate what this club was about, what the fan base was like. I think Celtic have got that in any case. But Connor, you were involved with the Green Brigade maybe in the kind of earlier days before I was even aware of them. How important are they to the club, and do you think the club embraces it as they should?
Not well. I was involved in the only capacity I had. I knew a couple of the boys and went to the football with them. I never really helped out anything beyond that. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of guys that were turning up to do these designs and stuff like that. I've been up there a lot of time. I was going to the games with them, and then when I taken my residency, and the first residency in the pub, I had to get up. I'd kind of just go and get to know them then, but I wasn't really doing much involvement with them, other than just going to the football with them. Yeah, they were doing a lot of hard workers in that group, and still to this day. They're definitely not received by the club, but the club are quick to jump on top of any kind of sort of displays or whatever, anything that they do, they'll say, we're not going to, we'll maybe like get today or whatever, we'll do that, and then they'll go and they can sell that. I mean, you saw the 125-year one against Barcelona, the big all-round display. Mm-hmm. And Celtic are quick to promote this around the world and say, look at our stadium, look at our atmosphere. And this is all organised by boys in the ground. This is all organised by the boys in the group.
Out their own pocket as well.
Out there, do you know what I mean? And their fundraising, there's little to no support for the club. And yet when it comes to how heavy-handed the stewards and the police can be in the section, the club don't want to know anything about it. In fact, they're actually encouraging the fucking the cops and everything and the stewards that they hire to go and harass the group members for bringing that atmosphere to the stadium. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. They don't cover themselves in any glory when it comes to the Celtic fans anyway. They just seem to continually fucking score own goals. They just take one step forward and two steps back when it comes to the support.
Well, that's a good point actually, Connor, because obviously we've just, I say celebrate, we can use the word celebrate quite loosely because it was difficult to celebrate 9 in a row when we're all locked in our respective houses, but we're awarded, and quite rightly, the 9th title in a row, and then on the back of that, as you say, scoring an own goal with the season ticket announcement. What's your thoughts on how the club have dealt with that?
It's crazy. I mean, it seems to be if you're not on Twitter, you wouldn't have a clue what's happening. And I feel sorry for JP on there, Celtic SLO. He's been thrown to the wolves by Celtic because every second tweet I've seen has Celtic SLO tagged, and the guy's just swamped under. And he's a fan like ourselves. He's just trying to do what's right by the club, but also be a fan at the same time. And to leave it this late with no clarity to anybody and then release a statement like what they did, it's shambolic. I mean, I can understand Celtic do need some sort of revenue coming in, but they have to remember as well, they're not going to have, if the games are behind closed doors, they're not going to have the sort of the bill for the police, the bill for stewarding, the bill for all these different things that are going to be going on. There's none of that happening, so it's a massive amount off the wage bill right away. I understand that people need paid, the stadium's not going to maintain itself and stuff, but to turn around and say full whack, you get a virtual season ticket. I went back 10 years ago. I gave up my season ticket just because we were living full time the same way as Connor, and I've always had a wee bit of a gripe with the whole way Celtic have treated fans, especially over the last 10 years. It's been odd. Things were getting better there the past 3 or 4 years. It seemed things were going very well for everybody, bar maybe the whole there's a away ticket scandal thing that everybody goes bananas about every time there's an away game. It didn't affect us because we weren't going, but I could totally understand how people felt. But things, for the most part, were going well. There wasn't quite so much resentment towards Peter Law because you could see he was helping to an extent. There was investment in the team doing well. There's players signing on contracts rather than wanting to leave. You're getting big money in for players, and then to do something like this, it just takes you right back to square one, and it's just so disheartening. I feel so sorry for these people sitting in their houses and now having to fork out £600 or get the prospect.
It doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense that people are paying this X amount of money for a season ticket. They've got them 3 season tickets. A guy and his 2 Waynes are going to be having to just paying for the 2 or 3 season books, and they've got 1 login to go and watch the game and stuff like that. But you're paying for 3 season books. No, it doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't think I've thought this one through.
The big thing for me, Connor, is, on big occasions like this, big decisions, it's all about fan engagement. You've got to engage with the fans to see what they want in a situation like that. Because I think for the lion's share of fans realise that, things are going to be abnormal for some time. But to just come away with that announcement and drop it like a bomb, and then, as Kieran says, leave JP to deal with the aftermath of it, on social media. But it's all about fan engagement. Let's talk to the fans and find out what the general consensus is before making a decision on this. I just feel that there's a bit of a discord there when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah. They seem to take the initiative and just say, you know what, we're going to do this, like it or lump it. There's a waiting list for season tickets. If you don't want it, somebody else will take your fucking ticket. I mean, that's just that's criminal. You know what I mean?
The sad thing is, there's people posting on Twitter saying, whoever's not taking a season ticket, I'll take it. And you think you shouldn't be encouraging this behaviour from Celtic. It shouldn't be a case of, doesn't matter if he's leaving his season ticket. He's had it for 18 years, but somebody else is taking it right away. So again, it gets back to that thing of treating fans like customers. And unfortunately, it's getting more and more regular that fans are customers rather than fans themselves. It's a shame.
And there was no waiting list. There was no waiting list when the Lisbon Lions fucking upper was lying empty. Do you know what I mean?
No, you're right. And obviously, you had the banners on the top tier, and the top tier was closed for European games and all sorts. So you're absolutely right, Connor. I mean, during the lockdown period, music and Celtic are intrinsically linked, and I say this every time I speak to musicians, and it's actually special. It's part of being a Celtic fan. I watch a lot of these big games, and you hear the generic chants, and you think to yourself, how soulless is that, at big English Premier League games. But Celtic have got a repertoire, we've got a repertoire of songs. Some of them are football songs, some of them are traditional Irish ballads and folk songs. And you two are involved in that. You're creating music for the fans to enjoy. When did the decision come to actually release the album? Was it really you two guys saying to yourself, we have to give something to the fans now because it's during lockdown? Give them something to enjoy. Was that part of the decision?
Well, it kind of fell into place. We've always wanted to be able to record our own stuff. Just it cuts costs down. It puts you in control of everything. And when lockdown happened, there was obviously no gigs going to happen. We knew it would be the case for about 6 months. So I thought, what money I did have left, invest it into recording equipment, and I'll just need to force myself to learn how to use it. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. The way that the album came about, it's kind of silly. We've always spoke about doing a Celtic album with all the sort of older songs of what we've done on it, and not just your generic Hail Hail and Celtic Symphony and all that sort of stuff. And stuff that's been done a million times before. But I mean, in terms of the album, we'd spoke about it late last year. We'd been speaking about doing a new album for 2012. But in terms of a Celtic album, we never wanted to mix Irish songs and Celtic songs on the one CD. We wanted to do one or the other. And just the way people might think, they're just doing it because of the whole 9-0 thing. But it was as simple as me getting recording equipment at the right time. Me and Connor having far too much free time on our hands to be able to do this, and getting together. We recorded Johnny Thompson in my spare room 2 weeks ago. We sort of released that just as a wee taster for people because we hadn't released anything in a few years. We met up with Chris from the Wakes last Tuesday. We went to a big lock-up and we said, well, what are we doing here? What are we going to do? We said, no, what, we should just do this album just now, because it's all songs, Conor in particular, he's been going live a hell of a lot over the lockdown, and the day Celtic won the 9, Conor was live for about 9 or 10 hours of that day, and the songs that consistently were asked for were stuff like Jackie McNamara, Coronation Cup, 1, 2 and Kick, just over and over again. You're thinking, the Irish stuff, we've played it a million times, we've very rarely done, I mean, you would play Celtic songs at a gig, but you wouldn't do a full set of them as such, there's not that many songs. And we thought, no, what, we've got an opportunity here, we can get together and do that. If it sells well, it sells well. If it doesn't, then at least we can look back and say, well, we're happy with it. So it kind of happened like that.
Excellent. And again, it does allow you to express yourself during lockdown. I found it very early on, I decided to do a podcast every day. And it sounds absolutely mad because it takes most of your day up. But what it's given me is a focus every single day. And obviously, with the music being recorded, I think Celtic fans and fans in general appreciate the new content that's been provided by yourselves. Could you tell the listeners where we can find your album, where we can download it?
It is just for sale on CD at the moment, partly because we only decided to release it last week. It was pretty much last Thursday. We were sitting in Conor's living room where he is now, and we had to re-record a few things, and we didn't really know how we were going to attack it in terms of release date, but we thought, you know what, we'll get it out as soon as. So as quickly as that, Chris went home on a Friday extremely hungover after staying at Conor's all night. He mixed it all night, sent the stuff to the guy that produces our CDs, and Conor was through at mine on Sunday with a batch of the CDs, and we started posting them out Monday. So it's available on Glasnevin1916.bigcartel.com, or if you message either of the band or anybody that knows us, they'll put you in touch with us. In terms of download release, it'll probably looking at early August. I know a lot of bands had tried to upload their stuff during the lockdown. We go through a third-party company that puts stuff onto all these streaming sites for us, and they're extremely backlogged at the moment, with musicians from all over the world just looking to get their content out there. So it'll probably be maybe 6 to 8 weeks before it's available on like iTunes and stuff. So it's just hard copies at the moment, unfortunately, for those that don't have CD players. But no, it's been down really well, and we've both been delighted with the response so far, despite us having to handwrite out every envelope.
Listen, I'll put the links on the bio of this podcast as well, Kieran, so anyone who's listening, check it out, Glasnevin's new album. And all that's left for me to say, Kieran and Conor, thank you so much for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
No problem at all.
No problem. Thank you very much. Cheers for having us.
A Celtic State of Mind has been named as one of 7 finalists in the Best International Podcast category at this year's Football Content Awards. We won the Best Football Podcast Award in 2018, and it is a real achievement to be finalists once again. Thank you all for your ongoing support over the last 3 years. If you have been enjoying our daily content, then feel free to vote for A Celtic State of Mind at footballcontentawards.com. I have added the link to the bio of this episode, and the instructions and further links are also on axom.net. You can also vote on Twitter by simply tweeting, I am voting for @AxomPod in @the_FCAs for #BestPodcast. Thank you again for all your support.